How's it going, everybody? Marley Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. We are now going to look at the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1. That is the Amazing Spider-Man Annual. That's right, 72 pages of awesome stuff. If you were a kid back then and this was, what, 25 cents, you're going to get your money's worth, that's for sure. Especially in 1964 with the Marvel Universe just growing and expanding as it was back then. This right here is an example of how great Marvel used to be back in the day. I'm not going to go too much into detail as to what Marvel's doing nowadays, but I have to tell you, if I was given this comic book and a comic book from today, I would definitely choose this one over the stuff that's being put out today. That's all I got to say about that. But what we're looking at today is the first appearance of the Sinister Six. That's right. Some of Spider-Man's greatest villains joined together to give Spider-Man a run for his money, and that's what we're going to see in this issue. As we see Dr. Octopus, Electro, Vulture, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, and Sandman, they're all going to join forces to try to tackle Spider-Man and let's see if they can defeat him. So we have 41 pages of indescribable excitement. It's written by Stan Lee and drawn by Steve Ditko. And so let's get started. And so we start the issue here. We see the police and Dr. Octopus, and the police have taken away Dr. Octopus's arms, his mechanical arms, that is. Remember, in Amazing Spider-Man issue 3, that was the first appearance of Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus gained the ability to control his mechanical arms through thought. That's a part of Dr. Octopus's abilities after that big atomic explosion in issue number 3. And so Dr. Octopus uses his mind-controlling abilities to help his mechanical arms break them out of prison. So that's exactly what happens. And word gets out that Dr. Octopus has escaped from prison. And so Spider-Man finds out that Dr. Octopus has gotten out of prison. And this is one thing Spider-Man does not want to have on his hands right now, is to tackle Dr. Octopus, because Dr. Octopus has always given him a run for his money. And the great thing about this issue is that we see guest appearances galore in this issue. We see Thor, he makes his guest appearance here. We're going to see Doctor Strange, we see Captain America, we see the Fantastic Four, the X-Men. Just so many great guest appearances in this issue. That's why when you got an annual like this, you know you're going to get some good stuff. And that's exactly what you're getting here in this issue. So we see Dr. Octopus, he meets with the rest of the villains that are going to eventually tackle Spider-Man in this issue. And so we also cut to the story here with Peter Parker and Flash Thompson. And remember, Liz Allen has been showing a lot of interest towards Peter Parker in the past issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and Flash Thompson wants to fight Peter Parker. And this is where we see an appearance of Doctor Strange. He's in his astral form, and it kind of freaks out Flash Thompson. I would be freaked out too. And so through that distraction, Peter Parker runs away to turn to Spider-Man because he felt like he had an eerie feeling that there was a guy right here. He's dressed up in a hat and a jacket, and he looks like he's troubled because Spider-Man's spider sense is tingling. And look here, it looks like the guy just disappears. All his clothes just kind of fall down, and there's no person in those clothes. So that's strange. But we find out that that person was Sandman. Sandman goes underground in the sewers because the Sandman has been summoned to meet with Dr. Octopus and the rest of the villains so that they can come to a conclusion of how they're going to defeat Spider-Man. So Spider-Man didn't know who that was, but if only he could have seen that that was Sandman. Alright, so we cut here to Aunt May, she's in the attic. She's looking at pictures of Uncle Ben. She's looking at letters from Uncle Ben, and she's crying over it. So we see a little bit of a rehash to Amazing Fantasy 15. So the origin story of Spider-Man is always brought up in annuals. That's what I've noticed in the past. So again, some great stuff. If you never known who Spider-Man was, annuals were always great to give an origin of Spider-Man to tell readers how he gained his powers. And so through seeing Aunt May being depressed, it also puts Spider-Man in a depressed state as well because he feels like he's partially responsible for Uncle Ben's death. And while his thoughts are on Uncle Ben, Spider-Man falls off the ledge of this building. And this is unusual because usually Spider-Man has great agility and like he keeps his balance, but this time it seems like his spider powers have just gone away. They're not there anymore. So that's what we're going to see. That's going to play a factor in this story is that Spider-Man's going to have to tackle these villains that he might not have his spider powers to tackle these villains. So that might play a huge factor into this story here. We see the Fantastic Four. They think that Spider-Man's just up there showing off for the audience down below, but really Spider-Man is in mortal danger because he's hanging on for dear life on that flagpole. So this is going to affect a part of the story here where Peter Parker thinks that he's lost his spider powers, but I can already tell you that Spider-Man does not lose his powers here. It's all in his mind. So here we go. We see the gathering of the Sinister Six, and Dr. Octopus, who's the leader of the Sinister Six, comes to a conclusion that they need to tackle Spider-Man individually, because if they do, through all the battles, Spider-Man will eventually weaken, and then the last villain standing will easily defeat Spider-Man. So each villain grabs a card, and on that card, or on that slip of paper rather, is a number. And that's going to be the order in which Spider-Man is going to fight these villains. And on the cards as well are different locations where the villains are going to fight Spider-Man. So that's going to play a big factor into the story. So again, some great storytelling from Stan Lee, and Steve Ditko's artwork is just getting better and better, I have to tell you. So Peter Parker cut school because he's all depressed. He thinks that he's lost his spider powers. Here we see a guest appearance of Giant Man and the Wasp. And so Sandman and the Electro decide that they need to kidnap Betty Brant because Spider-Man has had a past with saving Betty Brant in the past. So this will get Spider-Man to eventually fight the villains. If they can just kidnap somebody that's close to Spider-Man, then that will get Spider-Man's attention. And Betty Brant just so happens to be with Aunt May at that time, so Aunt May is kidnapped as well. They're brought back to the location, and so Dr. Octopus, he actually treats Aunt May and Betty Brant with kindness. He doesn't really threaten them that much. But, you know, J. Jonah Jameson, he's the one that witnessed this spectacle to begin with. So this is going to play a big factor as, you know, the Vulture shows up at the Daily Bugle and he tells J. Jonah Jameson that Spider-Man needs to come to this location immediately if he wants to see Betty Brant and this lady survive. So Peter Parker is put in this predicament. He's like, alright, I know my Aunt May and Betty Brant, the two people that are closest in my life, are in mortal danger. But what can I do? I don't have my powers. And so word gets around, Spider-Man is in need of help. We see that the Fantastic Four are alerted, Captain America is alerted, even the X-Men are alerted. And Peter Parker, this is just great storytelling again from Stan Lee. Peter Parker comes to a conclusion that he has no choice. He needs to put on his Spider-Man outfit, maybe even if it cost him his life. He's going to have to do what's right. He's going to have to save the two people that's closest to him in his life. So the first villain that Spider-Man comes up against is the Electro. And so the Electro tries to kill Spider-Man immediately by throwing an electric blast at Spider-Man, but Spider-Man leaps out of the way, and by leaping out of the way, Spider-Man realizes that he still has his spider powers. And so this gives Spider-Man the courage to fight the rest of the villains. So all this time Spider-Man has had his powers. It was only due to Spider-Man's mind, all the things that he was thinking about, that led him to think that he didn't have his powers. So throughout the issue, we see some great splash pages. This is again one of the reasons why this issue is so great, because you see some awesome splash pages like that. And then again, like you see appearances like Iron Man in the story. You're going to see the Human Torch in this story as well. Spider-Man goes up against Kraven the Hunter. He's the second villain he fights. Spider-Man gets the piece of paper. He doesn't even have to knock out Kraven the Hunter. And then we also see the guest appearance of the X-Men. But actually, the X-Men are not the ones that Spider-Man is going to be fighting. They're robots. Even we also see a guest appearance of the Human Torch, like I said. The Human Torch wants to join forces with Spider-Man, but Spider-Man says that it's pretty personal, these villains and these attacks towards Spider-Man, and he wants to be left alone. So here's where I was saying these are robot X-Men, and if you can tell who's behind it, it's Mysterio. So you see, this is the second appearance of Mysterio. And there's a reason why these battles, if you're saying, well, Spider-Man is taking out these villains pretty quickly, it's because when you have 6 villains like this, and you only have a limited amount of pages to use, the action scenes are going to be pretty short. And so he even comes against Sandman. And I'll just let you look at some of the great artwork here as I'm skimming on through the story. He comes up against the Vulture. But even the Vulture can't defeat Spider-Man. And again, a great splash page right here. And so the last villain Spider-Man is going to come up against is Dr. Octopus. And I think that's pretty telling. That's what it needs to be. And so he comes to the location where Dr. Octopus is going to be at. And remember, Dr. Octopus can use his mind to control his arms. Spider-Man fights for his life. Spider-Man fights like no one else in this issue because he has a purpose. He has a purpose, and that is to save Aunt May and Betty Brant. So this is probably the most dangerous battle he has in this issue. He's fighting in a giant fish bowl. And so he could drown. Because if Dr. Octopus gets a hold of, Spider-Man and holds him underwater long enough, that's not going to be good. But Spider-Man uses his webbing, and that tangles up Dr. Octopus's arms. And so that spells the defeat of Dr. Octopus. And so Spider-Man comes back to the location where Aunt May and Betty Brant are held captive. Spider-Man calls the police to pick up Aunt May and Betty Brant. And when they get back, Peter Parker greets Aunt May. He's like, "Oh, I was so worried. I was so worried." And so I think we have a great ending here where we just see Peter Parker, Betty Brant, and Aunt May. They finally are on good terms here. Especially with Betty Brant and Peter Parker, they've not been on good terms lately. So it's great to see that Peter Parker and Betty Brant are on good terms. And then old Skin Flint, J. Jonah Jameson is like, oh, all of you need to be outlawed, all superheroes. And then we see right here at the end, all the Sinister Six are in prison and they're in the same private cell. So that's how we end the annual #1 of Amazing Spider-Man. Hope y'all enjoyed this review. Go ahead and like this video if you've not. Subscribe if you have not subscribed already. And comment down below what you like. And I will see you in the next review.